How do you drive innovation and challenge the status quo? Welcome to the Immerse Catalyst series in partnership with Lloyds Bank. I'm your host, Izzy Obeng, CEO of Foundervine. And in this four-part series, we will be bringing you incredible founders who are defying the odds and shaping their industries in different ways. We'll be talking about the highs, the lows, the challenges, and that thing that keeps them driving forward. This week's guest is Sayce Holmes-Lewis, the founder and CEO of Mentivity. Mentivity is an incredible mentoring platform that helps young people thrive in education and beyond. So I am really pleased to be joined by Sayce Holmes-Lewis. You are the CEO and founder of Mentivity, an incredible platform that has been doing such amazing work supporting young people through mentoring to progress in education and beyond. You do fantastic work, but I don't know if many people know as much about your story and what led you to Mentivity as I think they should. So what's your story?
Gosh, where do we start? Got to start where it all started, at Aylesbury Estate.
South London.
South London,
Yeah.
South East London, a very unique area. I love South London. I love London in general, but Aylesbury Estate, where I grew up, was a very unique area because it was located in between Peckham, Camberwell, and Elephant and Castle. So we were kind of like no man's land to some degree because most people identified with Peckham, Camberwell, Elephant and Castle, but it was like Old Kent Road. You know, who's from there? But it was a very unique estate, a very mixed cultured estate, very, very diverse. And I learned a lot living on the Aylesbury Estate. Very, very powerful area, but it really is part of my identity in terms of who I am. And if I could choose to grow up on the estate again, I would definitely be there again because it taught me how to be prepared for life, be resilient, and how to work with people from other backgrounds, but also a true sense of community. And that was an extension of my family unit. My mum was all about community and family, and that was reflective on the Aylesbury Estate. So it was a very unique area, and it shaped me in so many great ways.
It's unusual, I think, to hear people saying that they would go back to live on the estate they grew up in, particularly where, like a lot of estates in London, there are challenges around kind of violence and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you feel like your upbringing has really kind of shaped who you are in so many ways. And I know education was a big part of your household, and you had a lot of strong role models in your life who guided you in different ways.
Yeah.
At the same time, you didn't necessarily see yourself reflected in the education system, and you've talked about what it was like to not feel like the education system was made for someone like you that was actively rejecting you.
Yeah.
And you even dropped out of college twice.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what education was like for you.
My first memories of education was in the home. You know, my mum was a teacher long before she qualified as a teacher, and education has been very paramount to her existence. But also, I come from a family of educators. My mum's been a teacher for nearly 15 years now. She took her degree after having the last of the 7 children. So I'm the oldest of 7. And when she qualified as a teacher, it was inspirational for me. But also, as I said, I come from a family of educators. Auntie was a senior lecturer at Canterbury Christchurch, cousin, senior lecturer. Many of my family worked in education, and I loved education because it was fun in the home. But when I went to school, it was totally different. It was totally different from my culture and what I've been taught about my history. So learning about history, I was intrigued about it, but it wasn't reflective of who I was. So quite quickly within education, I started to question myself and my place in the world. And that was a question that was never answered for me in my childhood. And I was rejected in education in the sense that because I found the work too easy and it wasn't stimulating, I just became mischievous and I wasn't really challenged within education. And not many teachers took the time out to understand me and understand my cultural kind of background and what I was struggling with in terms of school. But yeah, I was rejected really in education first and foremost. And then I went to secondary school and it was just like, what is this? I went to Kingsdale School in South London. At that point, it's probably one of the worst schools in London. We had security guards at school, and it was a difficult environment. But again, I would go through it all again because it was reflective of the world around me. And the world was rejecting me in every facet of society. So I didn't really have a place in society, and I was trying to find myself. But at the age of 8, my dad left the household, and that that broke my heart, when he left the household, because I was the oldest, and then there was a lot of pressure on me from my younger siblings at the time. It was three of us, and I was trying to find my way, and I didn't have that guidance and support from the man that I idolized and loved. And it really had a negative impact on my well-being, my overall well-being, and who I was as a young man. So I really struggled in school because of a number of factors in and around my life, but also education. I didn't feel accepted. So who I did feel accepted by was my peer group, and a lot of us didn't have our fathers around, and that was, we had linked trauma, and that's why we became friends. We had a trauma bond. So it was difficult to navigate, but I managed to get through school, got 5 GCSEs, and in the process met one of my inspirations, Mr. Devon Hanson, my head of year, who became an executive head teacher for ARC academies across London.
And he was a big role model for you
Oh,
growing up, wasn't he?
he's amazing. Still a role model to this day, still in my life. I was with him last week. It's been 30 years of support and mentorship, but yeah, and guidance. So he took time out of his life. He grew up in and around Peckham. He knew what we were going through. So he understood from a different perspective and knew what we needed. So that support within school got me to the end of school and allowed me to progress to the next stage.
Always quite focused, weren't you? You've talked about getting that nickname Grandad. So even in the midst of a lot of challenges and a lot of distractions, I think particularly for boys around that age, you always had a strong sense of, who you were and what
Yeah.
you wanted to do and a strong sense of responsibility. I think that I can just see how that's influenced Mentivity, and I'd love to hear more about what you actually do at Mentivity and the kinds of young people that you support.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm a person, I'm either all in or I'm out. I don't do things by halves. And if I want to do something in my life, everybody will know about it. And I will do everything in my power to make it a reality. And I've always been very determined and very optimistic. And I think without optimism, you can't reach your goals because you're going to get serious knockbacks. And I've had lots of knockbacks in my life where a lot of people I've seen around me haven't recovered. So that resilience was really in part from my environment, growing up in a council estate, as I said, being rejected in society, racism, from the age of 8, and just understanding that I was different and people were going to treat me different because of the color of my skin and my background. So my resilience was building over and over again. But at the time, I felt like it was an ongoing problem and never ending struggle. But it allowed me to see the good in situations that other people wouldn't, because I always believed things will work out. And that was something that was instilled in me by my mum, because she had to be optimistic. She was a single parent on the council estate, that stereotypical, what people may say, but she was unique, and she was optimistic and she always made things happen. So I learned that from her. So she's a massive inspiration behind Mentivity, because education has been paramount in my life, but also being a good person and being part of a community and having a cultural identity. That was something which is important to me. So that support from my mum, Mr. Hanson, was instrumental in my development. And I wanted to recreate that for young people. And that's where Mentivity was really born in my mind. And also my other mentors, Abdullah Ben Kamal and Mr. Stan Etheridge as well, two of my football coaches. And without them, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, working with young people. So they were the people that, really allowed me to create Mentivity and create this service for young people, to allow them to dream, and allow them to flourish and be optimistic within life. So, Mentivity is a mentoring organization founded in 2016. Became very disillusioned working in the youth sector. I nearly left, went into in-house recruitment at a reputable bank. But I decided, you know what, it's not for me. My soul doesn't take to it. So I was made redundant 3 months before founding Mentivity, and I didn't know what I was wanting to do or wanted to achieve. I just knew I didn't want to work for anybody else. So I did that and got my first contract in February 2016 at a pupil referral unit I worked at in Peckham. And what we do is really just one-to-one mentoring, supporting young people, linking their careers to their passions, because when you're passionate about something, that motivation is intrinsic. And you don't need to be motivated when you have to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go and train or go to work or go to university. So we try to use that passion as a vehicle for progression and changing the trajectories of young people.
So I think on behalf of the community, I have to say I'm really glad he didn't get that job. I think
Me too.
I think it's worked out.
Yeah, just a
So
little.
their loss, our gain. Um, it's really interesting the model that you've built, and in order to deliver the kind of work you do, you need to get lots of different types of organizations on board, supporting, partnering, collaborating in
Yeah.
different ways. You talk about speaking truth to power
Mm,
and saying the things that other people don't want to say.
mm.
What does that mean?
It means everything to me. I've always been a rebel. I've always been someone that will speak up when I see injustice. I was always someone that was outspoken about certain things that I believed in. Sometimes not in the most positive way, but I've learned how to articulate myself better over time, and I've grown within myself and invested a lot of time in myself. But I think it's been really important, just to progress, continually in life, because where I come from, a lot of people don't progress and are left by the wayside. So for me, it's really about just focusing on what I can provide to the community, but also being an advocate for young people and people that don't have a voice. Because for far too long, I didn't have a voice. I didn't understand what the structures and systems in place around me and how they were oppressing me and how they got me to the same critical juncture that so many other Black men in South London and beyond were reaching, and I feel it was either prison, progression, or death for some people. And the system was doing what it had to do, and we got to the same juncture. So I started to realize you're going through the same thing, you're going through the same thing, lack of opportunity. And now that I'm in a place where I can speak and speak my mind and speak the minds of other people and support their visions and what they're feeling and shine light on situations where people are being oppressed or discriminated against by, whether it's police or different systems, I have to speak up, because I've been blessed to be in this position, but without the community, I wouldn't be here.
I completely hear you on that. I completely hear you on that. And I often think about my journey building Foundervine and, what really motivated it. And often I talk about, working in the corporate sector and feeling disillusioned
Mm.
and seeing a need
Yeah.
in the community that I could fill. But maybe what I talk about a bit less is growing up with two older brothers
Mm.
and watching them navigate what it meant to be young Black men growing up where we did. I grew up in Tottenham, so not too far
I
from
used to rave in
yes, not too far off and from what it sounds where you grew up. And
Mm.
there was a lot of
Yeah.
distractions, a lot of opportunities to use that energy
Mm.
in ways that weren't always helpful.
Yeah.
And a lot of young men often get caught up in things that they shouldn't. So when you talk about the young men that you support and what they're going through and seeing yourself reflected in them, it'd be great to hear some of those real stories of young people you've supported. Can you share any?
Yeah, I think to touch on Mark Duggan, the killing of Mark Duggan was the catalyst for so much change. And I think it raised the conscious awareness of so many people in terms of the police and what they've done routinely for years in terms of state-sponsored oppression. Um, I myself was assaulted by a police officer at the age of 14, just going home from school. And that was a very traumatic experience. I was just going home after playing football, and a police officer came on the train, told me to get off, and didn't tell me why. And I was very inquisitive. I knew my rights to some degree. So with Mentivity, we've supported so many young people, thousands of young people since 2016. But there's one story in particular that stands out. There's a young man called Raheem Barton that I worked with from the age of 8, long before I founded Mentivity, when I was working for Suffolk Council as a full-time coach. And I was coaching a rugby session, and this young man just wasn't listening. And I looked at him, he was about the age of 8, and I looked at him and I says, "You come here, why are you not listening to me?" He said, "I don't want to do it, I don't like rugby." And I said, "Listen, you're here and you're going to do the session." In that moment, I saw myself as an 8-year-old. When my dad left the household, I saw how vulnerable he was, how angry he was, and that he needed that support. And after time, I realized that he was a Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio. We're both very stubborn, very, just strong-minded. And I just saw myself in him. And I worked with him extensively for nearly 10 years before he was unfortunately shot and killed at the age of 17 on the 5th of May. And he was actually with me on the day. that he was killed. He was coaching at my football club, City of London FC, that my brother founded. And we made a breakthrough on that day because we had sent him to Jamaica because he was at risk of harm. And he came back, and within 3 months of returning from Jamaica, he was killed. And on that day, we made a breakthrough. We paid him £15 for a 45-minute session. He was struggling with his hay fever, but he got through it, and he put on the best session he ever put on. And at the end of the session, he was lying down. It was a hot day in May, and he was on the AstroTurf, looking up at the sky, and he said, "You know what? Love for that, you guys." And I said, "What?" He says, "Love for that." So I love you guys. So I used to tell him all the time. And the first time I told him that, he says to my brother Tyson, "Is he all right? Like, does he like boys or men or something? Why is he telling me that he loves me?" I'm like, "Because I love my young people in my community. You know, it's important to tell young people that." So when he said that on the day, I realized that it was a breakthrough. And he was like, "I just want to live with what you guys are doing. I want to work with Mentivity. I want to become an architect. I want to realize my dreams. The people in the streets, they don't love me. You know, I don't have a future. So I need to change my life." And we made a breakthrough on that day. And I was like, finally, after nearly 10 years. And the night before, he lived on the Brandon estate, and there were some shots fired on the estate, and we knew what had happened. So we said, "Look, if you want to go out on this day, during the day, come out with us because we know what's going on." He said, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." He went out, didn't tell us. Got a call 5 hours later, Raheem's been shot and killed. And that broke my heart, you know, because that I saw him as a son, as someone that I could have saved and supported. And when his life was taken, I felt like I had failed. I felt like society had failed, and I was very angry that I couldn't save him. And I really struggled with that. And that's what led me to therapy, you know, because I realized there was a lot of trauma at play within myself, but also in our communities, because young Black boys taking the lives of other Black boys, I feel that's based on self-hatred, because they don't actually like themselves, they don't value themselves, and they can easily take the life of someone else that looks just like them because of how they feel about themselves, and that's reflective of that anger that they have. So when that happened with Raheem, it just made me more motivated to support more young people and prevent that from happening. But I'll never forget Raheem, you know, because he was such an integral part of not only Mentivity in our formative years, but also just I realized the magnitude of the issue we have in our communities in terms of violence and lack of opportunity for young people. So yeah, Raheem was a very difficult situation, but it's not all doom and gloom. You have a lot of young people doing great stuff. A young lady called Juliet hated education, just like me, hated education, on the verge of permanent exclusion at her school in South London. And she loved football, to play football with the boys all day. Really, really good player, but she didn't like learning. But I said, "If you want to be a professional football player, you've got to learn on the pitch, right?" She's like, "Yeah." So you've got to be receptive to learning, both in education and on the pitch. And if you do that, you're going to flourish just like I did. And fast forward now, she's representing Brighton Women's, West Ham Ladies. She represented Nigeria under 20s. She hated education so much, but she just enrolled into university at the University of East London, and she's studying sports journalism, of all things. So I'm very, very proud of Juliet, and that's where we use the passions of young people to help them navigate and experience success in other areas of their life, because we don't experience success in our communities too often. So it's important that we hyper focus on that success and allow them to become successful young people.
Those are two really powerful stories, and thank you for sharing. Firstly,
No problem.
I think with both Raheem and Juliet's story, we see brilliant young people who, with the right support, the right guidance, and with the belief that someone genuinely cares about them,
Exactly that.
you can see what they're capable of.
Mm.
Can you tell us about the Raising Aspirations project?
Oh, gosh, that came out of COVID, the first lockdown. It was an idea that we had. We were working with one of our biggest funders, a big financial institution, and we were about to roll out this delivery in schools, and then COVID came. And then I was like, right, what are we going to do? You know, we never embraced technology in terms of working with young people, because our work's about face-to-face contact, you know, with young people. So we had to incorporate Zoom. And then I felt my age at the time when I had to use Zoom. I was like, what is this? You know, how are we going to engage young people? And we used Zoom to run the Raising Aspirations project, which was actually creating a visible and viable pathway for young people into this financial institution, but also understanding the journeys of people that look like them from that institution and having that dialogue and that access. And it allowed those young people to dream, even though they were in lockdown and were really struggling. We engaged nearly 125 young people across two iterations of that in 2020, and that was a precursor to us being funded by our biggest funder at currently. So it's important to showcase progression for young people, and that they can get into rooms and spaces that they wouldn't even dream of, and even for me working with this institution, it's been a great journey. I've been outside my comfort zone. So yeah, it's been a really good project. Out of that, we've got 3 young people who've got their own business now. One is a photographer, and she's doing a lot of work for really prominent brands, and really, really proud of her. So we gave them hope in that moment, but they also gave us hope because they turned up every single day. We had a young man on the call that we didn't realize who was in Lagos, he's in Nigeria. And it was only to the last day in the celebration event when we ordered pizzas. We said, "Oh, everybody send your addresses." And he said, "Oh, I'm in Lagos." And everybody laughed, like, "All right, whatever, mate." And he said, "No, I'm serious. Look, I'm in Nigeria." We was like, "No way." So we were reaching young people that weren't even in the country at that time. And that's the power of technology. So the
Brilliant.
Raising Aspirations project was a real, real success. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
And what a powerful story and a journey that you've been on. I want to talk more about starting businesses, your journey as a founder. Um, Running a business is tough. It is stupid. Why don't you just get a job?
Oh,
It is
mate.
tough.
It's like jumping out of a plane with no parachute. That's what it's like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a maybe more of a glamour we put in our kind of hustle culture
Yeah.
around, starting a business,
Yeah,
living
it's
life on
great.
your own terms.
Yeah.
But they're not talking about the spreadsheets at that moment. They're
On a
not,
Sunday night.
they're not talking about going from a 9 to 5 you find stressful to going to a
10 to
9 to
10.
9. Yeah, yeah. And you've managed to build an incredible network, and as I've mentioned, kind of work with some of the biggest institutions in the world to deliver what you do. So talk us through your own experiences running a business, and kind of what the kind of biggest challenges have been in terms of starting Mentivity.
Oh gosh, I've always been a very entrepreneurial mind, even from school. I always knew how to make money. I was always had innovative ways to make money. I remember going to a bakery that had these sherbet straws.
I
And
remember
they
this.
were like 1p. So I used to get £5, buy
You're showing
500.
your age.
I know, right?
1p. Inflation. It's probably about a
But 10
pound
p
now.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But I used to go to this bakery before everybody else, early, before school, and I'd spend £5, and then I would sell them in school for 2 pence. So I would double my money pretty much every day. But what I did, because after lunch, I knew that people needed a sugar boost. So it went up to 3 pence. So it was a premium. So I was making between 10 and £15 a day at school just doing that. So I've always known how to make money. I've always been, as a young man, I was obsessed by money. I'm not obsessed by money now. But with Mentivity, I had no clue what I was doing at all. I just literally, as I said, it was like jumping out of a plane without a parachute and having to build that parachute before I hit the ground. And there were certain times I felt like I was close to crashing, and burning. But I just had that faith, and just was really unwavering in my approach in terms of, right, this has got to work. Like this, there's no other option. So I founded Mentivity as a limited company because I didn't want to be a charity. I worked for a charity for 9 years before that, and what I realized after I worked full time for about 12 months there was that they were making money off our plight. Oh, these young people are underserved and disadvantaged, and they need this. So they're getting this money in, but then they were taking a lot of money for themselves, and it actually wasn't reaching the people that it should. So I didn't want people to look down on Mentivity as a charitable case. I wanted to showcase self-determination and innovation, and I wanted people to take us seriously. So we set up as a limited company initially, and we ran that until Raheem passed away. Then we set up the CIC. So I have a CIC limited by shares, but I didn't understand that it shouldn't have been by shares, it should have been by guarantee. So then I had to set up a Mentivity CIC limited by guarantee down the line, which allowed us to get the funding from the corporate sector. So the reason why we have the 3 entities is because of sustainability. The limited company generates income through contracts from local authorities and schools. Local authorities only like to deal with limited companies and tender their services. So we work with youth offending services and local schools as well, where they all pay for our services. And what you find is that the people that pay for our services value it more, and we have more of an impact. So that allows us to generate income. The CICs allow us to get funding, and a lot of organizations and charities has taken on funding as just that's it. That's our only stream of income. And then what happens is then when that funding dries up, they disappear. And I don't want Mentivity to disappear ever. So the limited companies at times will prop up the CIC, and the CIC might prop up the limited company. So it's very fluid in that way. So, and as I said, we're very innovative in terms of our approach and what we're doing with some of these corporate brands. And we're about to announce a partnership with Spotify in the coming weeks, which I'm very, very proud of. And that's going to be probably our biggest contract to date. So there's going to be a lot going on with that, and looking forward to our partnership flourishing with Spotify. But people believe in what we're doing. They understand that it's about young people and supporting the community, and they want to be part of that because this is groundbreaking. You know, this isn't something that you see every day. And working in the charitable sector for so long, I became disillusioned, and I realized that we have to think more business minded when it comes to creating initiatives in our communities. And that's why Mentivity is the way that it is.
Let's talk about partnerships. So one thing that a lot of organizations do struggle with is being able to build a brand that is attractive to potential partners like your Spotify's of this world, like
Yeah.
your corporates, your local authorities, and to build the kind of business model and show operational the operational rigor that these companies are looking for.
Yeah.
So how have you built Mentivity in a way that is attractive to these partners, and how do you go about building these partnerships?
You know what? It's been interesting. I've always had the gift of the gab, you know, in terms of talking to people, and I know, you know, like I know my stuff, and if I don't, I will learn. But I'm a people person, and I would describe myself as a servant leader, and I think people see that. You know, this is not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about what I can do. Because if I make it by myself, that's great. But who am I bringing, but you know, through after me? And that's the most important thing. So I think people see that, and they see that we're an organization with integrity, with honesty, but we're really passionate about what we're doing. Because people really understand that we are here for the people, and we've got a lot of people trying to support us. You know, Southwark Council believe in what we're doing. Growing up in Southwark, in the London Borough of Southwark, on the Osbury estate was important for me, and Southwark in the last couple of years have been providing that support, so much so that we've got a new community centre opening hopefully by June. We've been waiting for about 18 months because of COVID, but we've got a new community centre, and that's going to be the first Mentivity community hub. So that partnership with Southwark Council is just a match made in heaven. I used to walk down this road every day to go to school, and now I'm going to have my own building that's going to be for Mentivity and providing services for not only young people but the wider community. So partnerships are important. You know, we've got to understand and be more empathetic to what's going on in the world. Without empathy, we can't make the change, because you need to understand what's going on in other people's lives and put yourself in their shoes. And once you're able to do that, you can see that you are privileged in whatever way. And I feel like I'm very fortunate and very privileged to be doing what I'm doing. I don't take it for granted, but I understand that this is far bigger than me. You know, this is God's work, you know, for me. So I'm going to continue doing this to the day that I die, you know, and bring it to the world.
I wanted to pick up on what you said about having the gift of the gab,
Yeah.
because it's more than that.
Yeah.
I've known about your work for a while now, and I've met you now, and it's more than that.
Mm.
I I was speaking recently about personal branding and the importance of personal branding as a leader generally, but also as a leader in the kind of spaces that we're in. And you've mentioned that kind of servant leadership that you have and being very people centered in what you do. But you are not only people centered, you were able to have that empathy with different audiences.
Yeah.
From it could be speaking to a senior person within a corporate one day and speaking to a 15-year-old in Peckham another day, and being able to identify with the needs and priorities of both.
Yeah.
There's also being the kind of strong operator that is able to effectively build a team, to structure a business model, to structure governance in a way that allows you to deliver the kind of work that you do.
Yeah.
And to do all of that with all of the complexities and the challenges and the craziness that is running a business, you've built an incredibly strong personal brand over the years. You also recently won Inspirational Person of the Year at the NBCC Awards. I have to mention that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I have to mention that. You know, they recognize the work that you've been doing. So tell us how you would define your own personal brand.
Ooh, Authentic, for sure. I am what you see, and I will say what I feel, because it's important. And I think everybody knows where they stand with me. As I said, I don't do things by halves. So if I like you and I love you, you're gonna know. If I don't, then you're also gonna know. But there's also room for self development in all of that, because I think in terms of my personal brand, without doing the work on myself, then I wouldn't be who I am today and what people see. You know, if they're looking from the outside, I had to do a lot of internal work. As I said, the therapy was important with Raheem, being taken away so prematurely. I was very frustrated, but I realized there was a lot of work I had to do on myself to be able to do more for others and give more to others. So therapy for me, as a black man, as a black Caribbean man, that was taboo, talking about your feelings and emotions. And I'm highly emotional, highly sensitive. So I've had to suppress that for many years. In this field of work, I can't be that, and I've got to showcase to young men as well that you've got to be in tune with your emotions. My son is 16, and from a young age, I've always told him to be in tune with his emotions. Don't hide how you feel. You can never be wrong for how you feel. So, and that's important for me, because I used to feel wrong for how I was feeling in certain situations. But those are your emotions. You must embrace them. So building the brand and my own personal brand has just been organic, to be honest. And as I said, authentic, because I don't have anyone doing my PR. I don't have anyone doing, anything. I've just done it pretty much myself. I had a little bit of support in 2020, but other than that, I've just done it myself. And I know I'm at the time now where I've got to branch out and do that. But I just want to work on my terms.
I'm trying to be cool and calm and collected. I'm trying, but I'm pretty in awe of you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I don't say that to flatter you at all. I say that from a genuine sense of admiration.
Thank you.
Admiration that you've managed to turn your passion into turn your pain into passion, and then turn your passion into impact. And to do that with those core principles of authenticity to who you are and not negotiating on that, and also integrity in everything that you do. And it's a very, very, it's just such a brilliant thing to be able to stay relevant and interested and empathetic to the challenges that the people who come through and need your services have.
Yeah.
And to also be thinking about how you can change the institutions around you by sharing that knowledge with industry. And there's just so much going on there. So I have to say,
I appreciate that.
I'm so impressed. And I kind of just want to just give you everything to carry on doing this amazing work. But the flip side of it, so you are someone who gives so much of yourself, literally pours so much of yourself out into the work that you do.
Yeah.
It can take a toll on mental health.
Yes.
It can take a toll on well-being. It can take a toll on your ability to maybe give to your family sometimes, and to really be present for your loved ones when you are just working to create change in so many ways. How do you manage your mental health and well-being?
Well, I've spoken about therapy, but also, even though people will see me as an extrovert and they've seen me in my whole life as an extrovert, I think as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more of an introvert, because I'm starting to recover at home. I love being at home. I've just got engaged in December last year.
Congrats.
Oh, thank you so much. She's an amazing woman, changed my life. And I think the balance is important, because, as you said, we can give so much to the point where we burn out. And I actually burned out in 2019, and I was probably at my lowest level ever, because I was giving so much to people that weren't giving enough to me, but also I wasn't paying attention to the things that I needed to work on, and hence why I went to therapy. So for me, it's about holidays. I love holidays. I love traveling. We were speaking about Ghana and the motherland. I'm in love with Africa. Kenya, I'm planning to move there, within the next 2 years, because I love being there. I just feel complete when I'm there. We got engaged in Zanzibar, so I have a real, close affinity with the motherland, because there's so much to learn and there's so much opportunity out there as well. And just being around my people, even though I'm from Barbados and Jamaica, I'm African, so that's my heritage. I want to get closer to that. And by getting closer to that, I feel we're getting closer to ourselves. So it's about balance, I'm an avid football fan. I love football. Without football, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, because that's what led me to working with young people through coaching. I've been coaching young people for 24 years. I run the London Youth Games team for Southwark for 5 years, and during that time, helped to produce Jadon Sancho of Manchester United, Reece Nelson of Arsenal, Tammy Abraham of Roma, Ademola Lookman of Atalanta, and I can name another 30, 40 players that we supported to get to their dream. So football was how I recharge as well, and thank God Arsenal are doing well at the moment. So hopefully we win the league. But football is giving me everything, and I never forget that. So I try to recharge through that. My son is an avid football player as well, trying to play professional. He's at an academy doing his studies as well, and hopefully, God willing, he gets to where he want to get to.
Amazing.
But, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
There's a lot there to unpack. And every time someone brings a football reference, I start to sweat. I'm like, yes, Arsenal, they won the match. Yes, congrats.
We've got to win the league.
The red
this year.
ones,
It's 20 years, 20 years, so, yeah.
But no, I mean, I can see the impacts that football has had on your life. And, you've mentioned in the past that it was through kind of doing football and having the opportunity to coach young people that kind of led you into wanting to support young people in education your whole life. So that's a big part for you. And there's so much you said there. And just picking up on your partner, mentioning that, she's been such a big part of your life. I remember reading somewhere a while ago that if you're an entrepreneur, you only have two options when it comes to partners. You either marry someone who completely understands and empathizes with what it is like to be married to an entrepreneur, or you don't get married at all.
That's it.
Because this life ain't for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not.
I've been married for 5 years now, and I have a husband who has the patience of a saint. And he's a teacher. He teaches 5-year-olds, and I think that's why he has. That's why he can manage me, because he has patience for 5-year-olds. And there's so much going on in that, and so family becomes so important. Partners become so important. In all of that, you've mentioned taking that time out to relax and recharge and all of that kind of stuff. When it comes to your future aspirations, because I absolutely know that it doesn't stop with Mentivity. You've been doing so
Who told you?
But I know just based on everything I've heard about you so far, that there's so much more coming from you. And I'm genuinely, authentically quite excited about what you do next. But tell us about what that might look like.
Well, it's taken Mentivity global. As I said, we've done some work in Uganda. 3 years running, I went to Kenya to do some work and just to do kind of a scouting mission, really, in terms of where Mentivity could fit in. So Mentivity Africa will definitely be coming, and that's a real obsession for me. As I said, I want to move to relocate to Kenya. So I think bringing Mentivity to the motherland is important for me, because...
Can I just say for the record that, and I've said it off camera, I need you to move to Ghana, because
let's go.
That's where it's at.
We'll do the next podcast in Ghana.
No offense to my Kenyan brothers and sisters, but Ghana is really where it's at. So I just had to plug it.
Yeah.
Before you can
listen, I feel that my lineage is Ghanaian anyway. With a little bit of East African, because I could understand a bit of Swahili when I was there, and I was like, how can I understand this? So deep down, I think it's there. But Ghana, I know, is a very close...
So let's think about this strategy.
Yeah. No, I do. I need to visit Ghana. I've really got a close affinity with a lot of Ghanaians, a lot of very close friends. But I know that Jamaicans and Bajans, they're pretty much Ghanaian. So I need to get out there. And I know when I get there, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to want to live here as well. So we've got to make that happen. So yeah, Mentivity Africa for sure. I want to coach at a high level. I've been a coach in the grassroots elite level for a long time, but I want to coach my national team. So for Barbados, I want to coach him at some point. I want to do other things, I want to become a yogi. I want to do, because I love yoga. So that's keeping me young.
And, we've brushed on the fact that we need to support young people in monetizing their passions. There's also something about creating the institutions that build wealth in our communities.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It means everything, because I think social mobility will lead to economic equity. That we have to understand that our culture is infectious, but also it's lucrative. And for far too long, people have been making money off of our success of our talent. And I think what you're seeing now, our gaze was always towards America and their culture and what they're doing. But what we're seeing now is that Black British culture and heritage now is at the forefront of, entertainment, in terms of actors, in terms of music. The gaze is now on the UK. And now what's happening, because it's getting closer and closer to where? To the motherland. And you look at Afrobeats and the impact over the last 15 years for us, and then Amapiano, and just seeing that African culture now side by side with Black British culture, but also Caribbean culture. People are now starting to understand that we're all one to some degree.
I'll never forget watching a video from Notting Hill Carnival where Burna Boy Last was playing, and everyone, and when I say everyone, even Ian and Linda were singing along to that song, and it was so wonderful to see the globalization of Afrobeats, the globalization of Black culture, and how, through technology and through more content creators actually self-publishing rather than waiting to be found.
Exactly.
We're seeing that kind of, the community become a lot closer. And maybe some of those artificial divisions that
we had historically
been created starting to dissolve a bit.
Oh, 1000%. Like when I was younger, actually even affiliating yourself with Africans as a Caribbean, it was like taboo, like you didn't do it. And even when my gran, God rest her soul, she passed last year, but I used to speak to her about, I went to Kenya, and she's like, oh, what are they like over there? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's amazing, gran. Like one day, hopefully we can go. And they'd be like, because you're African too. No, I'm not. I'm like, yes, gran, you originate from Africa. We all do. And even her and that generation, because of the division that was created in terms of Africa and the Caribbean and, Black culture, like people were ashamed of their heritage, and we're not seeing that now. We're seeing people being very proud of African culture, and it's not Black culture, it's African culture. This is African music. This is all stemmed from the motherland, but in the diaspora now has honed it in different ways based on their different cultures. So I think commodification is important, like going back to the Sunday League and football and content creation, all that stuff, Mandem on the Wall with Percy and Javan. Javan's doing great things in the United States. Percy had a breakout role in his film last year on Netflix, which was #1.
Incredible to see that.
Oh man,
I literally got goosebumps as you said that, because I do remember watching that.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Seeing that them on that Netflix show, I just thought it felt like my win.
Yeah, exactly that. And Percy and Javan are just very clean-hearted, amazing people, and I'm proud to be working with them and what they built and trying to enhance their brand through the Wall FC. So I think it's important that we can modify what we're actually producing.
Let's talk about community for a second, because I think there's something really magic that I see where it doesn't matter where I go, people can see me and what I'm doing. And, I was in Birmingham last week and someone came up to me and said, Izzy, we see what you're doing. We're here, we're supporting you. And it really just hits different when you hear that from your community, and you can kind of just see that journey. You have a lot of people around you all the time who are watching what you do, and you're also pouring into others who are building in this space. What does the community mean to you, and also how do we elevate it? And I say that because I think sometimes we have the challenge of a lot of people perhaps feeling like they're fighting over the same resources,
yes.
or have challenges breaking through, or maybe feel like there are gatekeepers, and there are kind of different challenges when it comes to building and unifying community. But what's been your experience of building a community around you?
It's been beautiful, I'll be honest with you. I love the community, and I don't just restrict it to the Black, African, Caribbean communities. It's about London being a melting pot of culture, and I love living in London because of that. And community means everything to me, because without the community, I can't do the things that I'm doing. And I think it's important to showcase that we can come together for collective goals. I think we need to understand, with all these organizations and people, we need some sort of advisory board in terms of the direction that we're going. And if everyone is working towards this goal, everybody has to play their part. And I think once everyone has their part to play, and they identify themselves with this movement, then everyone's going to feel valued. And if everyone feels valued and motivated, then we're going to see the changes that we haven't seen in our societies that we do want to see. I feel like after COVID, a lot of young people didn't see a future and are really struggling with that. And I think that we're not going to see the fallout and the effects of COVID probably for the next 2 years. I've seen, I think we'll really peak in terms of mental health and in terms of young people really struggling because they feel isolated. So I think we really need to understand that we've all got to do the individual work on ourselves, which is important to prepare ourselves to be part of a greater entity. And once we understand where we're going and we can move towards that, I feel that we will liberate ourselves from a lot of the oppression that we're facing after the killing of George Floyd. There was an outpouring of grief and empathy, not just from the African diaspora. It was from people that hadn't seen what we've been experiencing every single day for our lives, for hundreds of years. When people talk about racism, like, oh, that doesn't still happen, 70s, 80s. I'm like, no, I'm telling you what's happened now, and you're actually telling me that this doesn't happen. That's where, we struggle because there's a lack of empathy. So I think now because of COVID, there was a collective outpouring of empathy for people from different backgrounds because they realize, wow, this is what you're actually going through.
And one of the most powerful things I found since the George Floyd moment was the fact that beforehand, I think a lot of people would say that, you'd say something and oh, it's anecdotal, we don't have the data to support that. And unfortunately, institutions, government, they work on data.
Yeah.
If there is not data, they are not interested
That's
in it.
Yeah.
And so we've had this preponderance of reports and, different pieces of writing and projects that have like added data to the issues that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
For
And
time.
and
I think it's opened new conversations that
Yeah.
didn't exist before. And so, one thing I love about this conversation is that we've touched on a lot of different elements of business modeling. You've built a really clear value proposition. You've got clear target audiences in terms of the institutions and the businesses that you work with. You've touched on leadership and having the right style of leadership. You've touched on your personal brand. You've touched on governance and setting up the right company structure. You've touched on, building a strategy and having that ambition for where the business is going to grow. It's really clear to see the direction that you're going into and how much thought has gone into everything that you've built.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up, I do want to ask you a question about the advice you'd give to perhaps a younger person, perhaps an earlier entrepreneur who's wanting to move into the space that you are in, working with corporates, working with institutions to drive change. What advice would you give them?
It's the same advice I gave to myself. And when I do talks and I talk to young people, it's the same set of principles. Find your passion. Once you find your passion, dedicate yourself to it and persevere no matter what. So passion, dedication and perseverance. That's the key thing, because once you find that passion, as I said before, you come alive. You start speaking about certain things. Like, I'm passionate about young people. I'm passionate about football. Everything's intertwined, and I've created a really good career and life for myself around that passion of football, which then my secondary passion was working with young people. So yeah, if you find your passion, you've got to focus on doing that, not a career, because then you can find a career then linked to your passion. And then you're going to feel like you're not working. I don't feel like I'm working a day in my life, other than when I'm really tired. But I feel privileged and I feel blessed to be able to get up and create something and a service for young people in the wider community, and that I'm garnering support from other aspects and other people from my community that might not be from my background and culture, because we're all being oppressed to some degree. Who we pay tax, as business owners, we pay tax. Do we want to pay tax?
We pay tax.
But we don't. But that's oppression. Everybody's paying tax because
Yeah.
we're being oppressed by. So we've got to understand who we're up against and the systems that are in place and who it benefits. So I think for young people, just be fearless. Always be receptive to learning. Be humble, in situations until it gets to a point where you don't need to be humble. And you can articulate and express yourself in rooms and spaces which you would never believe you'd be in. If I told 8-year-old Sayce that he would have the life that he's had, I would have cried. I would have been like, no, like, this is not possible, because everybody told me that I was going to amount to nothing, that I was going to be a drug dealer, that I was going to end up in prison, or I was going to die. You know, that's what people told me. And these were people that were in education, you know, in society, and they were supposed to be people that were uplifting me. So you've got to have faith in yourself, and you've got to believe in yourself when others don't, because if you don't believe in yourself, who else will? You know, so it's very, very important that you do that.
Sayce, I want to thank you for everything you do in communities. I want to thank you genuinely for the impact that you continue to have. I want to let you know that I'm rooting for you, Foundervine's rooting for you,
Likewise.
and I want to just keep amplifying everything that you're doing.
Thank
you. Before we go, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me on Instagram, Sayce Holmes-Lewis, on Twitter, S Holmes-Lewis. You can also find me on TikTok. You know, all the young people are doing it now. I'm still young. I don't care if I'm 40. So yeah, I'm on TikTok as well. You can find me at sayceholmeslewis.com and also at mentivity.com. But also, before I go, I want to shout out my nephew, because this hat is his, Dream On Kid. You know, I'm supporting young people and what they're doing. It's important that we support young people's innovation and their ideas, and that they can do amazing things with our support. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing and beautiful hat, by the way. Where is it available to buy?
Dream On Kid. You go on Instagram and dreamonkid.com. So yeah, you can check it out.
Fantastic. That was Dream On Kid for everyone that didn't hear that. Thank you, Sayce.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Immerse Catalyst series in partnership with Lloyds Bank. For more like this, subscribe to our series wherever you are listening. To find out more about the program, please visit our website at www.foundervine.com.